Proton and Signal are no longer secure platforms. Or at least that's been the message shared by multiple media outlets and social media accounts recently. You see, Proton Privacy complied with a request to hand over a recovery email address to Spanish authorities, and a new hit piece is making the rounds claiming that Signal is just a front for the US government. What are we supposed to do with this kind of information? Today I want to explain what's really happening here, but more importantly, this highlights one critical part of personal security and privacy that we need to address and that often gets ignored for the sake of sensational news. Most of us are already skeptical of government surveillance and big tech companies. So when we read that a privacy company just handed over user data or is in bed with a government agency, there's, I think, this confirmation bias that tends to happen. Instead of asking questions and figuring out what's really going on, some people just throw up their hands and say, see, I knew it. There's simply no such thing as privacy and security online anymore. We're just screwed. I've seen this happen multiple times over the years, and the story is usually the same thing, whether you're watching this right now in May of 2024, or whether it's years down the road. So let's look at these cases specifically, and please do me a favor and watch to the end because I also want to explain exactly how this affects you directly. Let's start with the case of Proton. Spanish law enforcement made a request to Swiss authorities to identify someone they claimed to be a terrorist. Now, whether or not a government abuses this authority to label somebody as a terrorist, it really doesn't matter right here. Companies like Proton do have a legal remedy to fight these requests, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, every single company is required to operate within the legal frameworks of the country in which they are based. If you're a US company and the US government makes a legal, court-approved request for you to hand over your data, you have to do it, whether you agree with it or not. And the same goes for Switzerland and every other country in the world. Just because a company says they protect your privacy doesn't mean that they can just go and ignore these requests. And I think that's really important to understand, and one of the things that a lot of people seem to overlook every time that these news events happen. But what's also important to know is that companies can only give over the data that they actually have. All the data that's end-to-end encrypted can be handed over, but it's of no use without the encryption keys that, at least in the case of Proton and Signal, only you and I hold. And when it comes to email, you also have to realize that in order for an email to be sent, like any piece of mail, it needs to have both sender and recipient information. This can't be encrypted or else the email could never be delivered. The same goes for a recovery email address of any online account you create. If that were encrypted, the company wouldn't be able to see the email address in order to help you recover the account. In other words, in order to function, certain information cannot be hidden. Oh, but you're just trying to defend a company that you like and that has sponsored your channel in the past. No, I'm not. I'm trying to be realistic here. In this Spanish terrorist case, Proton didn't hand over the name of the user or any of his email for that matter. They couldn't because they didn't have that information to give. They were compelled by Swiss authorities to hand over the recovery email address, which they did. In this case, it was an Apple email address, and it was Apple who then handed over the name of the person associated with the recovery email address. At worst, you could maybe accuse Proton of not doing a good enough job of letting users know that this recovery address isn't private, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Switching gears to Signal, we've got an entirely different situation happening, but one that I've seen countless times as well. The founder of Telegram, a competitor of Signal, shared a message questioning Signal's encryption. Go figure. Well, in this message, he states that an alarming number of important people I've spoken to remarked that their private Signal messages have been exploited against them in US courts or media. Notice that there's no source to back up this claim, and the numerous people who reshared this conveniently ignored the fact that these are competitors. In other words, there's an undeniable bias here. Here's the thing. Anybody can claim that encryption can be or has been broken, but the burden of proof is not on you. It's on the one who makes the claim. So if the Telegram CEO is going to claim that their competitor Signal has had their encryption broken, I don't know, that could be true, but you're going to have to provide more than hearsay evidence in order for me to take you seriously. The other part of the complaint against Signal has to do with their board of directors. Apparently the current chairman has, I think, a history of promoting censorship and has concerning connections with the intelligence community. And I get it. I mean, that's a bad look for Signal and one that should probably be addressed. But Signal, like Proton, is open source, which means that over the past 10 plus years, security researchers have had access to the code base of these apps. Leadership, it matters, it really does, but the code is the code. The board chair's opinion doesn't change that. Okay, here's the primary message I want you to take away from all this. It's not that you should ignore FUD, and it's not that you should blindly trust me to use Proton and Signal. The primary message is this: privacy apps and services are only as strong as the user who uses them. You can purchase and install the strongest lock on the front door of your house, but if you leave the window unlocked, that's not the door's fault, it's yours. This is something called personal OPSEC, or operational security. This is everything you do that includes the usage of apps like Proton and Signal. So, for example, did you know that you can remove or change the recovery email address in Proton Mail? In the settings of your Proton account, click on Recovery, and then right here under Account Recovery, you can either turn off the Allow Recovery by Email option, or you can change it to a burner email address that you've created. Mind you, if you turn it off, you won't be able to recover your account if you lose your password, but that's on you. That's part of your operational security. At the very least, you should turn on data recovery via that recovery phrase and keep that stored somewhere safe. And if you don't want Proton to have access to, let's say, your IP address, which is the identifier assigned to your device on the internet, simply use a VPN or Tor when you're logging on, which hides your IP address. Honestly, most of this only applies to those who have reason to be highly concerned about their privacy and security. But even if you're just the average internet user, you can't rely on software to protect you. It's your responsibility to build strong privacy habits. And one final thought: be careful what you share, even within the walls of end-to-end encryption. Sometimes we can get lulled into this false sense of security, and that's when mistakes happen. If you don't want compromising pictures of you shared online, here's a wild idea for you: don't take compromising pictures and send them to your boyfriend. I know it's not always as black and white as that, but sometimes the best and easiest way to hide information is to not share it digitally in the first place. Should you stop using Proton and Signal? That's really up to you. This kind of news doesn't change the fact that I still use and recommend them, but no matter what software or app you end up using, you need to recognize that your operational security, how you use these apps, how you store your personal information, how you share data, etc., is just as important, if not more important, than the tools you use to do it. Thanks for watching. And if you want to see the privacy and security tools that I use every day, watch this video next.